Okay, so let's talk about playing left-hand accompaniments for Irish tunes on the BC accordion. We're going to try some left hand on a polka first, because they're easiest to get the left hand going on. We're going to use a nice easy polka to try this with the Britches Full of Stitches, pretty common polka. We're going to do it in G. So it starts on G and it goes like this. I'll just play it through slowly so that you can make sure you've got all the notes. Okay, so that's the right hand melody. If you weren't familiar with that already, then just sort of stop the video now, learn that tune, check that you can play it just like that, and then come back and we'll look at the left hand. So just in case you're not familiar with what these buttons on this side do, they're all in pairs vertically, so you get a bass and the chord that go with it, so bass chord, bass chord, bass chord, bass chord, and like, you know, it's on the right hand, they're different on the push and the pull. So to begin with, in other kinds of music like English music and French music, it's pretty common in a tune in 2 or 4 time for the left hand to just go bass chord, bass chord, bass chord. So that's where we're going to start, at least, because that's the simplest thing to do to get your left hand working independently from your right. So using just this top outside pair of bass and chord, which give the chord of G on the push and D on the pull, we're going to play that kind of accompaniment, just going bass chord, bass chord. Now, different people find it easier to do this in different ways. Some people find, like, if you just sit and practice going bass chord till that's really comfortable, and I'm just doing short taps. Notice I'm not like not holding down the buttons, I'm just tap, tap, tap. And then you might find that you can just try and play the tune on top of that. And just concentrate on keeping that going. It depends, as I say. Some people find that easier, some people find you have to sort of break it down more and look at bars one at a time. So let's go through it like that, because you'll want to check it anyway, even if you find you can just put it together quite easily. So the first bar, you've got to think about how the timing of the right hand goes and how it's going to fit over the left. So the timing of the right hand goes 1, 2 and 3, 4. So that first note, that's dotted, so it's like 1.5, 1, 2 and 3, 4, and that means that the notes aren't going to land exactly on top of the left hand note, so you're going to get a bass and a chord on the first note, and then nothing on the second note, and then 1 each on the third and fourth. Okay, so watch out for that, because again, a lot of people, what will happen is you'll find you'll want to hit a note at the same time, but you want to make sure you don't, so it's both on the first note and then nothing at all on that second note. So just do that a few times, make sure that's running smoothly, and then the next bar is easier. That is just 1 left hand note on each right hand note. So first 2 bars, Okay, so you can run those together. And once you've got that far, it's going to come quite easily from now because a lot of it's pretty similar. The third bar is just the same as the first. And then this fourth bar, again, you've got a longer note at the end of it, so you get bass on the first, chord on the second, and then bass and chord on that longer note. And try and make sure that your left hand notes stay spaced out evenly, so they're going 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people, mistake that might crop up that a lot of people have is you sort of rush your left hand notes if they're just two going on one note. So space them out nicely like that. And then it repeats almost the same. So the notes are different there, but the left hand rhythm is the same as it relates to the right. Just one each in that bar. And again here, 1, 2, and then long notes gets bass and chord. Okay. So that's the A part. I'll run you through 2 A parts. You can try and play along with this. Check that your left hand's doing the same. So 3, 4. So that's the A part. In the B part, first of all, because again you can change these chords later to make it sound more interesting, but for now in the B part we're just going to do exactly the same but using the lower outside pair of bass and chord. These give G on the pull, C on the push. Now you might find, so at the top you're probably using finger 1 and finger 2, your index and middle finger. And different people, again, do different things for the lower buttons. Some people just move the whole hand down and use those same fingers. Some people use middle and ring finger. That's what I usually do. And some people play sort of 4 fingers for 4 different buttons. So they're playing little finger down there. For Irish music, it doesn't matter too much which you do, really. For other kinds of music, I normally recommend using all 4 fingers because you do fancier chords made up of 3 buttons and things. But for Irish music, you're pretty much always just doing these simple accompaniments on 2 buttons. So just use whichever fingers feel the most comfortable for now. You know, if you have trouble getting one pair of fingers to work, try the other pair. See what you can get going easiest. So rhythm, just like the A part. Again, in that first bar we've got 2 left hand notes for the first right hand note, and then nothing, then 1 each, and 1 each in the next bar. Okay, so that's stage 1. Again, don't worry if you're not, playing along with all this in real time. The idea is that you might need to stop the video and practice these things for, possibly a few days. I don't know. It depends on how your practice comes on. But that stage 1 is to be able to play all the A parts, doing that on the top basses, and all the B parts, doing that on the bottom basses. And then when you can do that fluently, no problem, then we move on and do the next thing. So what we're going to do next is, so I mentioned, for English and French music, it's pretty common to just keep doing that. For Irish, it tends to sound a bit too much. It's a bit too full. So often we drop out some of the basses, and what you're left with is just the chords. landing on what you'd call the offbeat. Yeah, something I was going to mention earlier. I don't know if you normally tap your foot when you're playing, but if you don't, I'd recommend trying to get into always tapping your foot when you're playing. It's good habit. If you watch really good players, you'll see they pretty much all have a foot tapping while they're going. It just keeps you in the groove. And it's good to be able to hear it even. It actually sort of forms part of the sound of the music, really. It's sometimes quite odd if you can hear someone playing but you can't hear their foot tapping. So just based on what we were doing earlier when we're doing the bass chord, your foot's tapping just on the bass, not on the chord. So foot tapping bass, chord on its own, foot tapping bass. So now when we try and drop the basses out, we're going to be going foot, chord, foot, chord, foot, chord, foot, chord. Okay, so we're going to play exactly what we've just played, but no basses this time, just the chords where they were before. So like in that first bar, it's going to be in the middle of the first note, and on the fourth note, and you'll just hear the foot tapping where the basses were before. So yeah, sorry, I moved to the lower chord as I changed parts there. I'll just do the end of the A part, and then okay, so that's stage 2. So again, I'm just going to whiz you through these things to keep this, you know, get as much as we can in this one video lesson, but, you know, see how long it takes you. A lot of people take quite a long time to build up the coordination in the left hand to do these things. You might find you get it very quickly, or you might find, you know, you need to put in a fair bit of practice time on it. It's just depends. And then, so again, when you've gone away, make sure you can do that very fluently, come back, and we'll do the next thing. So the next thing is to sort of mix those two approaches together. So rather than playing all basses, or playing no basses, we're now just going to play some basses. So it might sound something like this on the left hand, might be going like... Okay, so there's different ways you can mix in the, you know, the gap with no bass or putting the bass in. We're going to stick to quite a rigid pattern at first just to get it all working properly. We're just going to do one every 2 bars. And when we were doing all basses before, I said, you know, just do them as short taps. That wants to stay true for the chord. You always want to be just tapping the chord. But now that we're only putting a few basses in, when you put one in, you can make it really long to really emphasize it. So it sort of goes all the way up to the chord, like bass, chord, bass, chord, like that. So it's going to come in that first bar, a long bass, and then the tap on the chord. And then, sorry, no bass there. And your other tap on the chord there. And the rest of it's just the same as the last version we did with just the chords. Same again. And the same. So we're doing it every 2 bars, and it works out fairly easily because those bars are all the same, the ones that we're going to put the bass in. We can do the same thing in the B parts. So that first bar, and remember we're on the lower ones now, a long bass, and the tap on the chord on that first note, nothing, and chord. So on back round. So we've now approached it in 3 different ways, and again, you know, take the time, practice that one, make sure that's fluent, and then next thing we're going to do is so yeah, that was putting in the basses at very regular intervals, which sometimes you might do, but more often the basses almost want to be dotted around a bit randomly. If you listen to you know, Irish box players playing with left hand, then you know, often the basses they catch you by surprise. They're often they're not at regular points in the tune like that, not at the start of every 2 bars or 4 bars. They're dotted around, often on notes that want to be emphasised. So you might hear something more like this. Okay, so I was trying to, you know, do it almost at random there. There's no rules. You don't want to get too many all in a row going bass chord, bass chord, bass chord. But I certainly put 2 in a row quite a few times there. Often like at the end and then beginning of a phrase. So like maybe... so you heard I did, you know, at the end of the second bar, this one, and then this one, and then leave a bit of a gap, don't do a bass for a while. And you just have to, you know, build your own sense of how often they should come, how many basses you want to hear, and how big the gaps should be. So we're now on to a fairly, you know, this is what the left hand's doing basically. This is a fairly common approach, and a lot of players might not ever do anything much more complicated than that really. Just final thing we'll talk about for this tune is I've simplified it in terms of, you know, where the hand wants to be, and you can hear, you know, all the chords sound fine. There's nowhere where you think, you know, like something like that, thinking, oh, it's a horrible clash with the left hand note and the right hand. But that doesn't mean they're all necessarily the best possible chord either. So you might want to move around a little bit more. Let's just look at how you might change whether we're just going to stick between these 2 pairs of views, but you might change more often between which you're using. In fact, I'm going to do this for the B part first, because I think the B part does almost fit best for these lower notes for all of it. really just those two Ds at the end. It's best if you move back up to the top. Just thinking where you want to move. Yeah, in fact, probably just for the final D, because otherwise you're moving in between a pair of where a bass and chord would be, which makes it awkward. So after you've done that, the second to last note, the D that will get the chord tap down there, then just move up. And when you move, that's often a place when you're going to want to put one of your long basses in to emphasize the fact that you have moved, or even before and after you move, like that. So yeah, B parts, almost just as we've done it, staying mainly to those lower ones, but just the final notes, long bass and chord on the top pair. Let's look at the A part now, because we might want to change that up a bit more. So definitely starting on this top pair. The theory behind this, by the way, I mean, I don't know what your experience is with music and chords in general. I don't know if you've played any other instruments or if you know about how chords work. But a chord is just a collection of notes, normally 3 of them. So like a C chord is the notes C, E and G, C major chord. And the idea is that when you're choosing what chords you're using to accompany something, basically you want the notes that are in that chord to be there in the tune as well. There is a bit more to it than that, but that's a simple explanation of how it's working. So the tune starts on the note G, so we know we've got to choose a chord that has the note G in it. So the chord of G has a G in it. That chord is G, B and D. Although a C chord also has a G in it. But for reasons that I might explain fully in another lesson, but never mind for now. G chord's going to be better. So we're going to stick up there for the first couple of bars at least. Now this note, you can hear that's not as good, that doesn't fit as nicely. The reason being that note is E, the chord is G, and there isn't an E in the chord of G. But there is in the chord of C. So again, once we get to that note there, we'll move down to the lower chord that gives C on the push. And again, emphasize it with the bass if you like. And then we're going to carry on. It's just like the beginning, so we'll go back to the chords that we were on at the beginning. Now here, again, that doesn't sound as nice as we'd like, because that note's B, and we're playing a D chord. You've got to remember whether you're pushing or pulling, so we're pulling, this is a D chord, and the D chord is D, F sharp and A, so there isn't a B in there, but there is a B in the G chord, so if we're pulling down here, we've got the G chord. So we'll move down for that bit. And then back up to the top. And then yeah, we've got another E in there. So let's see. Like that, I think, because the end of the A part's just like the end of the A parts. So we want to make that same move from down here to up here. So that's just where we want to move down. Well, now that we can see we've landed on an E, let's move down. So we're just going to move down for one bass and chord. or you could move down one bass and chord earlier. Like that. Again, there's a lot of room for, you know, deciding this for yourself, because as we've already seen, all up here sounded fine, A part, all up there, all down there sounded fine, B part. After that it's just, you know, finding things that you prefer. But I'll just play the whole thing once like that, moving up and down between these two pairs, so that you can, you know, see what I'm doing at least, and where I put the basses as well. So here we go. Okay, and one other thing I thought of that I was doing there, so as well as doing a long bass into a chord like that, so we can put in long bass and the next chord is still where you'd expect it to be, like that. You can also put both down together, so you might be going chord, chord, both together, and that'll often that'll go over where your next chord would have been, so let's just find an easy place to put that. So maybe like that in one of those bars, like the first bar in the A part, you could just play it like that, bass and chord together, and then no second chord, but just that one where it goes on the fourth note. So bass and chord on the first note, and chord on the fourth. And that's the sort of place where I'd often use it, is when you're moving and you've got a long note on the right hand as well. So I might just land on both to really emphasise that, and then I'm back to normal. So that's, you know, all you need to know really for left hand to accompany that polka. And then any other polka that you know that's in G, you can try doing just the same things. So let's see, like Ballydesmond polka number 3, and you know, other easy polkas, things like Maggie in the Woods, you know, just any easy ones really. And if you want to get started on reels, exactly the same thing really. So I'll just play you a little bit of Sally Gardens and we'll just start to look at how you'd apply this same thing. So again, if you took it down to the simplest, bass chord, and think about, you know, the foot tap goes there. Yeah, so again, it could work all just sticking to those buttons, but again, once you get into, again, go around the pattern of things with it, do this bass chord all the way first, then try just the chords, then try just a few basses, you know. And think about where you might want to change chord maybe as well. Slight lower down is good here. And then what we haven't really touched on yet is this chord, inside top chord on the pull is A minor. Would fit well for that part. And so on to the end, but anyway, that's just a bit of a, you know, a taster for how you'll apply this for reels. See how you get on with all of this, and again, have an experiment with some tunes of your own, see if you can make the same things work for those other tunes, and yeah, hope you get on well with it. Thanks very much.